What's going on, everybody? LK here. So we started from the top characters that people think are really good in the game, and we've talked about characters that people consider to be struggling in the game. So I want to look more at characters that people don't really agree on. So either characters that people think are not that great but are actually really good, or characters that are really good but maybe not necessarily perform so well. So the first one I actually want to do is the Flame of Corruption, Sol Badguy himself, the main character of Guilty Gear, the first person to ever smell the game himself. Sol is a pretty interesting story as far as characters in the game, because he was really good from the jump. Basically, every strong player of the game thought he was the best character in the game. And of course, this is a kind of recent thing from Arc System where the main character is just really good. He's just really good. So he became public enemy number 1. But the thing is, though, he was the main character. So it's not like he had some type of super strong gimmick or anything. He's just a pretty simple, pretty straightforward character that's just tuned really highly, which we've seen quite a bit. I usually have words for how people feel about characters like this, but that's not for this video. Despite how good he was too, his results at the beginning of the game were pretty mixed, I would say. For example, in EVO 2021, during the online EVO, Sol won none of the regions. EU was won by Chip, North America was won by Nagoriyuki, kind of a Cinderella story here. Asia region was actually won by Axel in a very big surprise. And Latin America once again was won by Chip. So Chip won 2, Nagoriyuki won, Axel won, Sol not really present at the top. And then soon after, Sol got a couple of rounds of nerfs, so he's kind of fallen off. But that being said, in Season 2, despite people not saying he's a very strong character, there are 2 Sol players in Arc Revo. So Arc Revo is Arc System Works championship series that they do, and the way you qualify, the only way you qualify, it's not like other tours where you can qualify by points, and usually they have like 16 to 32 players. This tournament only has 8 players, and the only way you can qualify is by winning the tournament. So the fact that 2 Sol players have qualified, to be fair to one, from EU skill, he does play more than one character, but one of his main characters is Sol. The other person who qualified is Mochi, who only plays Sol. The fact that these 2 players have done this with Sol, that means they have to go against established characters such as Ramlethal Valentine, Happy Chaos, Nagoriyuki, among others. So let's take a look at Sol, what's good about him, what's bad about him, and why he is able to perform despite people saying he's not that good this version. So personally, by the way, I sort of agreed with everybody. I was like, oh, you know what, like, Sol's still okay, but he's definitely fallen off compared to before, but my mind's changed. I actually think he's pretty good. Let's be toxic first and talk about his cons and then his pros. So first, we have to talk about his neutral game. So on release, actually, he had a pretty strong neutral game. One of the main reasons is he got a new command normal in this game. He has a 6S, and when the game came out, you could not mess with this move at all. That being said, though, things have changed. So he has a couple of issues with his neutral game. So for starters, he has stubby normals. So what do I mean? He doesn't have large normals. So most characters' punches and kicks are not very big, right? Even Nago, who's someone, basically everyone are like, this character has amazing normals, his punches and kicks don't go very far. That being said, though, most characters' slashes and heavy slashes tend to be bigger moves. Slash and heavy slash usually use the weapons whatever the characters are carrying. So for Nagoriyuki, for example, here you have Nagoriyuki's far slash. Far slash is a proximity normal, so when he's far away from you, this is what's going to happen, and that sword is not a lie, that move is very large. Sol has a pretty unique far slash then, so Sol doesn't actually use his sword, he just punches you. He just punches you and it advances. When he actually uses his sword, it's for 2S. 5H also uses a sword, and it's not like huge. Where here, Nagoriyuki's 2S and far slash easily reach. So with all that in mind, his main long range normals are his 6S, which to be fair is quite large, but weaker than it used to be. In the current version of the game, it is much easier to contest than before. Then he also has this, 6H. But 6H has a couple of its own problems, mainly that you cannot cancel into anything at all. These days, people don't complain about my button presses so much in the comments, but I'm gonna mash on special move, and you really cannot cancel this move, so it's heavily punishable. So because of this, his screen control is like not that great, so you can't really use normals to control the screen. You do have this. This is a pretty good move, and of course, forward slash once it reaches, you will have advantage. But forward slash, he's committing. He has to move towards you when he does it. So it could be hard for Sol to get past either really fast pokes like big jabs and kicks. So let's say I try to use forward slash, I just get smoked. It's kind of hard. Or it could also be difficult to get past large normals that get in the way. He does have a projectile and gunflame, and he does have some mobility options, but his mobility options are kind of committal. So you have things like Bandit Revolver and Bandit Bringer. While both good options, he's really committed to moving a certain way, so you have to get in the right spot to do it. And he himself is not that fast, so his walk speed and back walk are not that fast. His run is okay, and his air dash is pretty standard. Even in the air, he doesn't necessarily have really big buttons, despite them being good at what they do. The attacks he does have for moving around the screen, again, while good, they're really punishable. So the main ones he has are Vortex. The nice thing about Vortex is that it does go into stuff, and he can get a combo of it, but on block, it is easily punished. Bandit Revolver is a pretty interesting move because they buffed it so you can delay the follow-up, which can lead to a lot of guessing games, but the follow-up is risky and the first hit is pretty punishable as well. Bandit Bringer is safe at -2. Usually the main problem with using this move is that there's some attacks that can be commonly used that would cover jumping and Bandit Bringer at the same time. So another con is a point about his defensive stack. So when the game came out, he had an incredibly powerful defensive stack because he had a really fast reversal. His SDP was 7 frames, his 5P, 5 punch, right? This is 4 frames, and this is 3 frames. So it was pretty hard to rush him down. So in this version of the game, it's much easier to deal with his reversal stack. So they slowed down his DP. He can't count on human error as much on defense as before. It was legitimately pretty difficult to safe jump him before. And then finally, one of his greatest enemies, it is the green bubble, Faultless Defense. So he is a strike throw character, but unlike some strike throw characters, his offense is especially weak against Faultless Defense. He gets pushed very far, as his close slash is attack level 4 and his far slash is attack level 3. So because these moves have more block stun than normal, especially close slash being attack level 4 and far slash being attack level 3, they have more pushback than other characters' moves in the same situation. It's a little bit hard to compare, but if you look at Sol doing close slash to Baiken, he gets pushed under the B icon, right? So pretty far. Baiken's close slash is a lower attack level, meaning it has less block stun. So if I do her close slash, she gets pushed a pinch before the B on the other side. So you can see that there's less pushback because her close slash has less block stun than his. So one challenge that many Sol players face is adjusting pressure for Faultless Defense, because Faultless Defense is an instant action. Basically, as soon as you press Faultless Defense, it activates. So it's on you, the Sol player, to either know they're going to use Faultless Defense, react to them doing it, and this is quite an advanced skill. That being said though, let's go through Sol's pros. So one, and this one is really important to me, and pretty important in Guilty Gear as a series. You see this in the XX, Exert, and also Strive. He has pretty good conversion ability compared to most of the cast. So take a character like Baiken. Baiken is considered to be pretty strong by most characters. One of her major weaknesses is her conversion ability is not great. The biggest issue being that she has problems hit confirming her best pokes. So pokes like far slash and 2S don't lead into combos. So for example, on a crouching opponent, I have no problem going into a full combo. But on a standing opponent, I'll be able to either block or even reversal in between the far slash and the 2H on hit while I'm standing. Sol luckily doesn't really have this problem. Most of his hits lead into not a great knockdown, but it does convert. This hit here, while not realistic to get, like you're not realistically doing 2S raw Bandit Revolver like that, but just showing that he can get it is pretty nice for him. It's not often that he's not able to combo. So not just things like pokes or counter hits, but things like anti-airs are really consistent with him, as well as air versus airs. Next is plus frames. So he has a lot of moves with good frame advantage, which is not that common in the game. And when the game came out, it was really rare, to be honest. So he has a close slash that is attack level 4, so it has more block stun than other close slashes, but it is plus 3. His far slash, which is an advancing move with a low total duration, which means it could be a little challenging to see him with it. If you have a lot of experience in the game, you should be able to see it, but for a new player, something like this might be pretty hard to deal with. This move is plus 2. And on top of that, he has Fafnir, which is a guard crush that's advantageous. Guard crush, you can't do normal things on block. So a lot of moves, you know, you could use, say, YRC to get them off you, but if you block a guard crush move, the CPU is set right now to YRC any attack I do, but you cannot do it to a guard crush move. On top of that, when the game came out, guard crush is not affected by passive defensive mechanics like instant block and faultless defense plus instant block. While now it is, you still have the big advantage. So as a review, when you block a move and exit block stun, or when you wake up from knockdown, the game gives you 5 frames of throw invincibility, which means they can't throw you right away. So if you try to do it too fast, it will look something like this. Sol has a little bit of frame advantage, right? A little bit is an understatement. He's plus 3, so he has quite a bit of frame advantage for this game. So that means if you don't get the throw, you did it too fast, right? So he's plus 3 plus an additional 5 frames of throw invincibility, which means between the close slash and the following throw, you have 8 frames, right? 3 frames advantage, 5 frames where you guys are even but cannot be thrown. It might be a little bit hard to parse here, but you can see the player 1 Sol, the default color Sol, kind of leaving his blocking stance while the opponent's Sol is trying to throw. Throw is 2 frames, so it's pretty fast. So what you end up seeing is just the throw whiffing and the player 1 Sol just kind of chilling. Now, if you do it correctly, it looks a little bit different. So since he has advantage, he needs to time his throw, but because you only have 5 frames of throw invincibility, you can't use 6 frame moves to fight the enemy throw. So for example, Sol's 2K here, this move is 6 frames. So this is what happens when you use a 6 frame move. So you see it, I get punished. I get hit out of my 6 frame move. Here you can even see Sol's 2K go through the other Sol, and I just get thrown. However, if I use a 5 frame move, I can easily defend myself, and honestly, the faster move you have, the easier it is to defend these situations, and the later you can press the button. So Sol, being as esports as he is, he has a 4 frame 5P to defend himself, and the 3 frame 5K to defend himself also. All this gets thrown out the window against Guard Crush because Guard Crush moves have 0 throw protection. So I could try any button I want. I could try 2P, gets thrown. I could try 2K, mashing, gets thrown. I could try 5K, mashing, moves esports, still gets thrown. So he has many ways to set up offensive advantage frames that most characters do not have. Then there's his incredibly high damage. So for example, if you have the nerve to even try to mash Sol in the wrong spot. And that combo is nowhere near optimal. And Sol kind of has high HP. Like if I did this to say Chip or Amelia, this would do way more damage. Considering that a lot of his offense does come from a place of advantage, unlike many other characters in the game, the risk return is pretty rough. And speaking of risk in general, his plus 3 move, Close Slash, is attack level 4, so it builds quite a bit of risk. Remember, the more risk gauge you have, the more damage you will take. And similarly, his far slash is plus 2 and is attack level 2. So he's good at building risk as well, which leans into how much damage he's able to do. Then he has pretty good use of meter, and he's good at building meter. So the building meter part mostly comes from how consistent his conversion ability is, plus how he's able to push his offense because he has good advantage on all his moves. So with the simple example we showed before, this builds a small amount of meter, but he gets his advantageous situation off this. And this doesn't include him running, jumping, and catching you blocking. In the case he catches a straight 2S, which is pretty common. He gets good corner push and a little bit over 20 meter, which is pretty good for the game. So he gets to be in a strong position and builds a good amount of meter. Then when he has meter, he has a bunch of ways to use it, between mixing both real 50-50s and tricks with Bandit Revolver, so something like this. This most people would call a trick, because you can defend this with defensive technique, but you can mix this with actual 50-50s. Set up something like this. So he has a variety of options with pretty good reward on it. But then, circling back, you can apply it to neutral as well. So now, with meter, all of a sudden, things like Vortex, random Bandit Revolvers, and Air Bandit Bringer all of a sudden become much, much safer than before. So, of course, he also has combo applications as well with Fast RC, so he also has this application for combos as well. So, while this is far from an optimal combo, this is just an example of how flexible he is when he decides to spend meter on combos. He could break the wall if he wants, keep the corner if he wants, whatever. So, as far as defense, he's actually pretty good too. You might have picked up on this, but in the throw example of Close Slash, while he can't use his 6-frame move, no one can, to be honest, he does have 5-frame, 4-frame, and 3-frame ways to get people off him, as well as a reversal DP. So it's actually pretty hard to rush down Sol. So between these buttons, DP, and then typical things like backdash and jumping, it could be pretty hard to just stay on him. Here's a pretty common one with Geo. So most characters, their fastest button is 5 frames, so they're not really able to follow up pressure against Geo. And if they happen to press the wrong button, they might get counterattacked by her DP. That being said though, Sol has both the option to use both his 5P at 4 frames to punish her 2 and 4K, which is a 4-frame move, or he does have the option to use 5K, but this one is a little bit weird, this version I want to say, compared to the last version, because of a nerf they made to the 5K success Gatling. That being said though, he does get a hard knockdown off this if he wants. Usually having a move that's -5 or safer, -4, -3, is an advantage in this game, but against Sol, it's not gonna help you that much. And again, because of the speed of his normals, despite him having kind of stubby normals, he is really good at protecting his own space. While he's not the best at getting inside yours, necessarily, depending on the character, he's very good at protecting himself between 2S, 5P anti-air, 5K anti-air, preemptive things like 6S. So with all this being said, why is he able to perform? So the main things that people point to for why they think he is not good is that other characters are too good. So they look at extremes like Happy Chaos, Nagoriyuki, and Ramlethal, and even Leo. Both a little bit of remnants of how good they were from the previous patch, and then also how good they are right now. But to be honest, I don't know if you noticed, but Sol actually has a lot of stuff going for him, and he usually has favorable risk return in a lot of situations. A lot of characters are good at keeping him out, but not necessarily do a lot of damage to discourage him from coming at you. That privilege is pretty rare. Another thing that's really good about him is that he's a playmaker. Like, you can make things happen with Sol. It's really, really important to make things happen. This idea, of course, the term is from American football, but it's something I've thought about more and more in fighting games, starting with Dragon Ball, how if you can't do something when you want to do something, that is a weakness of your character. It might sound weird too, especially when we get into like, oh, how do you express yourself in games? How do you be creative in fighting games? But honestly, one way you express yourself, I mean the main way you express yourself, is the choices you make. So if you are playing a character that you're in a situation where you feel like you cannot do the thing you want to do, that is a weakness. Generally, Sol is mostly able to do what he wants to do, especially the longer the game goes on. Because again, you have to remember, with meter, he becomes much stronger and much more mobile. Things like Bandit out of nowhere and Vortex to go under characters with far horizontal pokes are legitimate threats that usually most characters' response to this is doing nothing. Unless they have some type of super strong neutral control, characters like HC, Nago, Zato, with their tools to preemptively cover large swaths of the screen. If you don't really have that, you really have to respect him. Which leads to another point where he's basically good in each quarter of the game, to borrow another term from sports. I talk about the 4 phases of fighting games, and what I mean is like each portion of the game. So neutral game, block string offense, block string defense, and knockdown. But then you also have to consider each portion as far as time, like the beginning of the round, the middle of the round, the end of the round. Because of his conversion ability, even though he doesn't get good combos, he still mostly combos everything. And again, with meter, he's just able to do really high damage conversions that most characters cannot do. So especially in the middle or later part of the round, he's pretty scary. He has above average HP as well. He has slightly higher defense than most characters. The standard defense is a 1.0 defense modifier. Usually standard guts is considered to be 2 guts. While his guts is indeed standard at 2, he has a 0.98 defense modifier. So just slightly better than average. And then even if he does get caught quickly, most characters aren't that good at rushing him down because he has such a good defensive stack between all his fast buttons and how good he is at converting off them, and the reversal, as well as universal mechanics like throw, backdash like we discussed before. And then finally, while some characters are blatantly, obviously good, so we don't have to talk too much about Happy Chaos, like aiming the gun controlling the whole screen, he runs up at you, everything's like super plus, that stuff's like really obvious. Or characters have huge normals like Ram, really obvious, fast character, high damage. He's a strike throw character, so people tend to not value strike throw characters that highly unless they have some type of extreme thing or something to just pin you down. And I find it pretty interesting that people apply this to Sol despite how much advantage he has. The main difficulty for him is dealing with the green bubble, FD. However, you can look at this another way though. Even though he's weak against faultless defense technically, as in he gets pushed really far so he has to adjust his pressure. One, even if you get pushed out really far, like let's say here, he is good at protecting his space. So he has like 2S, 5K, 5P, so it's not like someone can just go back in on him very easily. And then 2, you can low-key think of it as like a meter tax when he catches you, because you really want to faultless defense his stuff. You don't want to be caught sleeping on not faultless defensing the Fafnir, for example, because if you don't, look at the difference between the pushback between not faultless defensing it and doing it. You're way farther. So if you don't faultless defense that, he just 50-50s you. He just does it. He just gets to 50-50 you. So you're forced to spend meter on making sure he stays out no matter what. His moves that he uses for pressure, again, close slash and far slash, have more block stun than other characters close slash and far slash, so he's going to take more meter away from people or build more risk. And on top of that, he's a simple character too. There's not a lot of things you could mess up. There's not a lot of like execution checks necessarily. So all in all, it makes for a simple but complete and solid package. I think he just suffers from main character syndrome, a combination of Arc System Works main characters being made to be good for quite a long time. Honestly, I think Narukami Yu from Persona 4 Ultimax and Persona 4 Arena, I think that's the first example of them like really juicing main characters. And of course, we can all agree that when the game came out, he's probably the best character. So we have that. Then the weakening of him, plus people getting better at the game, but not so this is weird to say, but like not so good that you could see all the advantages like past his disadvantages. And then also just the general increasing the power level of the game and people being hyper focused on how good the absolute best characters are in the game. I personally think he is just under the strongest group of characters in the game right now, around that level. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. As usual, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Like and subscribe if you guys feel like it, and we'll see y'all next time. Peace.